Welcome to Relationship Equity, a podcast that explores how successful people cultivate meaningful connections with others in their personal and professional lives. Learn from the stories, insights, and advice of leaders, innovators, and influencers who have built strong bonds with their teams, their customers, their communities, and their families. Here's Richard Walker.
I'm back with legendary Twin Cities broadcaster Eric Perkins. In part one, we discussed how he followed in his famous father's footsteps and had a successful 25-year run at KARE 11 in Minneapolis. Now, Eric, I want to explore your transition from personality to entrepreneur. That's a tough move. It takes a lot for people to start a business from scratch. So I'm curious, what motivated you to leave the comfortable world of television to start Perk Productions?
That's what a lot of people ask. A lot of people assumed I had something lined up. Okay, they must be not announcing what you're doing because you have a 6-month non-compete and you can't say anything. Right. Not at all. I literally just had it, end of the rope, done. I think COVID maybe gave me some weird perspective. We broadcasted from home during those 8 to 9 months. I started to realize, Richard, just how much of my kids' lives I was missing. I have 3 school-age kids that I frankly just was not seeing. It put a strain on my family relationship, my marriage. It was a tough schedule that I lived, and that's anchoring the 6 p.m. news, the 10 p.m. news. So you're going in at 2 p.m. You're getting home at 11:30 at night. You get your kids on the bus to school. Then they're at school and then you leave before they get home from school. And so really you don't get home. And then when you get home, they're in bed and then you travel during biking season and all that stuff. And it was just like yes, it was a great job. Yes, it provided us some amazing opportunities and other things. But ultimately I was strained by the schedule, but more importantly, I was not enjoying it. I had been there, done that for so long. And there was a lot of ebbs and flows in any job. Right? There's drudgery and things you dread and all that you fight through and, creative, things that you go through. But ultimately I was looking at about 2 or 3 years where I just was like, I felt soulless almost. I wasn't feeling it. And I'm like, I think it was that moment that I was just like, well, what am I doing then? I'm not enjoying this anymore. The schedule's awful. I was staring at what would have, the business had changed a lot. We were getting asked to do a lot more, because it was on so many different platforms now. It wasn't just on nightly news. You're feeding all these other beasts. And I was staring at a frustrating salary cap, if you will. And I just said, this is not worth it anymore. I'm just going to, as I say, screw it. I found an exit strategy to where I could buy myself a little time. And I took a lot of interviews and I just kind of leaped without a net, frankly. And I decided to bank on myself and realized that because of the relationships I've built up over the years and the network of people that I know, that I can probably figure something out.
I want to go back to something that very, very important you just said there, because obviously the title of this podcast is Relationship Equity. I'd like to dig into that a bit more. How so? The relationships you created with people intentionally and just because of who you are, how has that really helped you start your own thing?
Yeah. One of the best parts about the job that I had for as long as I did was my opportunity to get out in the community and meet people such as yourself and to really kind of not just meet them, but to work with them in a lot of ways and in fun ways. And all the ambassador type events that one has when they're in a platform of being in the public eye, and that's charity events, and that's emceeing this and helping out with this organization and doing all that. You build it up over time, and I worked hard in it. I mean, people say what they want about the work I did. He's that goofy guy at KARE 11. It was a lot more intentional that I think people really know. It was a brand that I took seriously, and frankly, I worked my butt off to stay out of trouble, stay out of scandal, stay out of situations that were negative. And there's a lot of pitfalls these days for for a lot of landmines that people in the public eye have to navigate. And it was not easy, but I really kind of ultimately just trying to stay a good person, right, and just trying to be kind.
Very, very clear to me when you helped us, my wife did the Susan G. Komen, and you did a skit for us at Fox Hollow Golf Course, where we live, on the pond there with a little plastic alligator. It was so much damn fun. I'll never forget that. We had so much fun doing that. I can't thank you enough for doing that. It helped us a lot with the charity event that we did, the big golf event that we did. But it was very clear to me that you genuinely cared. You wanted to create something that was special, that was different, that people would laugh and it would bring joy to people. And you'd already done that 1,000 times before, but it was like you did it for the first time. And it was very clear that's who you are. And I'm sure that because of who you are and because of that genuine desire to help people and make people laugh, and not just that, because there's a serious component to what you're doing now to help companies, businesses grow. And I think that people need to understand that you're not just this fun guy that makes people laugh. There's a serious business side to you that people need to understand. You can help them with bringing your unique way of helping companies and people. So let's talk a little bit about that as it relates to your business now, because it's important that people understand that you're not just going to come and make people laugh. You're going to help them grow their businesses.
Yeah, and I realized that over time, that relationship equity, if I may, that I built up over time would be stupid to just abandon, right? It would be reckless. It would be irresponsible to just take all that I'd built up over the years, that sort of like genuine connection, and just kind of try to figure out something else that had nothing to do with that. And I leaned into that, and I ultimately took a lot of meetings and realized that there wasn't just maybe one thing that I wanted to do, but more of a lot of things that I was interested in doing. And this is a side hustle, and this is a freelance project. And yes, I want to help out with this project. And yes, I'd love to MC this. And so ultimately we my wife and I, came up with Perk and Play Productions, sort of an umbrella of all those things. And that's internal and external communications for businesses, for their websites, for their social media campaigns, a lot of creative storytelling, and ultimately a way to cut through and help bring value to these businesses that are, I mean, let's face it, there's especially in the digital world, social media and any kind of video marketing, it's tough to cut through some of that because a lot of the content out there, and there's a lot of content out there, but a lot of it, what stood out to me, Richard, is that a lot of it just sucks.
Now, what do you mean specifically about that? Why does it suck?
I think it's just homogenized and watered down, or just not very interesting or compelling. And I think that it's just like it's almost like white noise. It's a lot of it, to where like people say you doom scroll, where you're just like scrolling on your phone, and it's just like until something catches your eye, right? And until something grabs your attention. And frankly, this is all about attention. Is kind of capturing that attention, being able to tell stories in an authentic and captivating way that is ultimately going to bring ROI to a client, right? And I think that it's been interesting over time to kind of just abandon that local news mindset and actually serve clients in ways that I still can use all the skill sets that I developed over time and just put it to use for businesses and companies.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because obviously you've gained a tremendous skill set over a long career. How has that helped you specifically now as a content creator? I mean, facts tell, but stories tell. People, you told so many stories today. People remember stories, and they remember how it makes them feel. I mean, the way I just told you how you made us feel when you came out and helped us promote our Susan G. Komen golf event. You made people feel good, and it helped with promoting that event. But it's more than that. So, based on your long career and the skills that you've gained, how has that really helped you now with this new endeavor?
I think just being able to be flexible, working on deadlines, working in situations that are chaotic, but like keeping control during the chaos. I think that there's a lot of ways to skin a cat when it comes to creative storytelling, and I think that working with a variety of people, like over time, I was able to interview a huge range of folks with diverse backgrounds and
Right.
and young and old and blue collar and the highest of highest CEOs and just sort of like being able to sort of almost chameleon myself into but in a genuine way, not to where I was like being disingenuous, but like
Yeah.
and just trying to be a character, but actually make connections. And I think that people's viewing habits these days over time have gotten pretty doggone savvy. I mean, people can see through bullshit, if I can use that phrase, pretty doggone well
can.
these days. It's you have to be authentic. You have to actually have some sort of resonance of truth and validity to what you're doing and what you're saying. And yes, it can be fun, and yes, it can be comical, or there can be twists and turns in the way you present things. But ultimately, it has to be genuine. And I think people see through it if it's not. And so I think that over time has served me rather well as well.
I couldn't agree more with you. And having the ability to communicate with all walks of life, with varying backgrounds and careers and ethnicities. I mean, you've earned that with everything you've done with the world that you've traveled with your work. I got to ask you this: who's the most fascinating person that you've either interviewed or worked with or spent some time with on your travels?
Oh, geez, the most fascinating.
No, you've met with a lot, Perk.
I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. There's just far too many.
I didn't think I could stump you. I thought somebody. I mean, you mentioned Johnny Mack. He was your childhood hero. But is there any that somebody either they were maybe a challenging person?
I think the person that I just most, and this might sound like I'm just trying to like drop names or whatever, but he became a genuine friend over time. And I think that it was like, there's athletes that you make connections with and just like have a good relationship with. But then there's athletes that actually become like your dude, and you're their dude. And like you just, it goes beyond that sort of like interviewee relationship. And I think I had that with two people in particular. First, it was Kevin Garnett. I think KG and I just had a thing. And it was, people called it a bromance or whatever it was. It was odd. It was a weird relationship. And he thought I was just like weird and goofy enough to where he was intrigued by me. And over time, we really got to know each other, and we actually helped each other on a couple projects. And I think that kind of deepened beyond just that sort of surface level. And I think Adrian Heath, the former head coach of Minnesota United, and we became actual friends too. So, and that was those were really good relationships that I had with people that I was fascinated by, but that didn't starstrike me. They were more just like, I know they starstruck other people, or at least KG did, but over time, I just really became enamored with the relationship that we had.
Human dynamics is fascinating. And once you get past that, you're an athlete, I'm a broadcaster, whatever it is, this is what we do for jobs. And you get below the surface of, okay, you're a human, I'm a human. We've got a lot in common. And there's something special about our connection, that human dynamic. And then what you do for a living gets pushed aside. It's just, a connection there that you really can't explain. I mean, we've all got that. Everybody listening now has got that in some way, shape, or form. If you think about your absolute best friends, the people I call it, in the inner circle, the inner relationship circle, those are people that, if your house is burning down at 3 a.m., you make a phone call, they don't even ask, they're in the car, they're there with a bucket of water to put it out. And those are the kind of people that we surround ourselves with. And you don't do that with everybody. It's the special connection that we all have with certain individuals that is irreplaceable.
And that's one of the things I love about what I'm doing now is that I'm working with businesses, and I've said no to a good number of businesses, but I've said yes to a good number of them as well. And I think the ones that I lean in towards are the ones that I can really connect with on a level beyond business, right? Where I see them as the quality of people that they are. Several of the businesses that I'm affiliated with right now are family owned, and not some giant conglomerate. I there's that connection, and frankly that collaboration that supersedes just that sort of business relationship or partnership. It goes beyond that, and it's actual like genuinely caring about one another, and ultimately, I think when you do, you work better together. As a result of that, the product that you're putting out is even better because it's a real, authentic kind of pitch and push because you believe in what they're doing and who they are.
Now, you say you turn companies away. Let me tee you up, Perk. What's the ideal prospect for you that could benefit from your services? You are very confident that a company that's this kind of profile would absolutely benefit from talking to you and using your service. What's the ideal profile of that company?
I think, frankly, for me, a business that I'm looking for, at least now in the stage of my business, is one that has a local or statewide or regional reach. I'm not necessarily, looking or leaning towards national entities, right? It's something where they at least have a working knowledge of me, and that I have a working knowledge of them. And I'm also being really mindful of staying categorically exclusive, if you will. So if I'm doing commercials for Burnsville Toyota, which I am, I'm not going to do another car dealership in the area. If I'm doing Gens Ryan heating, cooling, plumbing, and electrical, I'm not going to do another home services business, and so on and so forth. And so I guess to answer your question, there are some categories and pillars that I don't have clients in yet, and so those are sort of the ones that I'm looking at and reaching out to as far as business development goes. But yeah, I think there's a lot of businesses. Ultimately, the ones that I'm looking to help are the ones that I can help. The ones that need help with storytelling, the ones that need help in getting their messages out, the one that needs help in getting their brand amplified. And then there's a lot of different ways to do that. But really, that's what I think I bring to the table is the storytelling. And sometimes I'm the face of it. Sometimes I'm the brand ambassador and doing the commercials. And other times I'm just sitting back and being a producer and writing and collaborating and working with my photographers and editors in telling the best story.
Now, you've been in business for just over a couple of years now. That's always the hardest. The first 2 or 3 years is the hardest to get a business going. You said something about sales, and now you're doing kind of everything right now. You can't do everything, and in order for a business to grow, I started this thing with my business partner in 1998, and we've made a lot of mistakes, but fortunately, things turned out pretty well for us, and we got a lot of advice from a lot of different people, and I get advice all the time from. I have my own personal board of advisors, and my biggest advisor is my 23-year-old daughter still. Who do you get advice from? Have you got actually business advisors? Is it just friends, or who's advising you with your business?
Great question. There has been ebbs and flows. There has been growing pains, right? When you're working in the corporate world, I come from a world where it's churn, burn, burn, churn.
Deadlines.
Well, yeah, every night, and bim, 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 and then all of a sudden it's just like I'm working with a corporation, and I'm like, okay, what are we doing? Look at this. Like, here's an idea. Okay, yeah, let's run that. We're gonna run that by marketing. The next thing you know, there's like 2 or 3 meetings, and you're just like, where are we at? What are we doing? Let's go. And it's just like that sort of like, I don't know, that seismic kind of like almost like giant barge sort of.
How difficult has it been for you to change the way you think and operate because you had to?
I'll never forget, because I had such creative control before, and now, ultimately, I think the very first thing I did it was for a wellness company, and it was just like, here's this story, I'm featuring your instructor that you wanted me to do, and it's just, I think it turned out fantastic, and I was like super proud of it. I'm like, their socks are gonna be knocked off, and they came back and said, it's great, but here's a bunch of notes. And literally 9 notes of like, here, we want this change. What about this? Blah, blah, blah. He said, take this part out. I'm like, oh, wow. this isn't the way it used to be. I actually have to, I'm serving a client here. That was different. And just all that sort of corporate schedules.
Yeah.
I learned what Q4 is and Q2 and I don't know.
Don't forget
all
one
that
of the
jargon. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Moving the needles and like, put a pin in that. And what are we talking about? Why are all these sharp objects coming my way?
Well, ultimately, you've got a brilliant service. There's no two ways about it. But there are so many.
And I do. And to answer your question, my wife gives me great advice and keeps me level-headed and sometimes my head out of the clouds and brings a sense of realism a little bit more. Well, yeah, because I'm sort of this optimistic dreamer who's got all these ideas and I'm all over the place and I have raging ADHD and it's hard to harness sometimes. And she's the one that's just kind of always brings me in with a little bit more realism and just kind of like practical advice. And then I have a couple marketing partners that I work with that I really appreciate their feedback and then just bouncing stuff off of them about, if I were to do this, what would be the best way to structure it? Or if we did this, what else could we do with them? And that kind of stuff. And it just, that stuff, it's just so nice to have confidants that really know the business also, that you can kind of work stuff through.
That genuinely want to see you succeed. And that's, one of the most important aspects of anybody that's thinking about starting their own business. You must surround yourself with the right people who've got not just the right skills, but the right motivation to help you succeed. Well, we'll end on that note, Perk. I can't thank you enough for joining us. Wonderful words of wisdom. It's been fun as always, and I for one would love to help you in any way that I can.
Thank you, first and foremost. Secondly, thanks for having me on. I listened to a couple of your podcasts here already, and I just think you're doing a great job. I think you're onto something here. This is a really important topic and one that is relatable to a lot of people, but also that just everybody experiences, and it's valuable. So the final thing I will tell you is that I, believe it or not, still have my pink golf shoes. And
no, you don't.
I 100% do. I 100% do. And I still bring them out on occasion. And whenever I do, they're showstoppers, man. They still to this day are absolute talking points. So,
well, it's been wonderful talking with you. Great catching up. And we're back in the Twin Cities. I'm down in Florida at our place down here. We're back in the Twin Cities in a couple of weeks. And let's most definitely get out there and whack the ball around in your pink golf shoes.
So let's do it.
And that's it for another episode of Relationship Equity. Please make sure to leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss out on any future episodes. Cheers, and I'll see you next time.
This has been Relationship Equity. If you want to take your career, your business, or your personal relationships to the next level, reach out to Richard at yorksolutions.net. You can also get Richard's book, Relationship Equity, your cornerstone investment to great gains in business and life, on Amazon now. Relationship Equity with Richard Walker is a production of Forbes Books.